This is so important to know because if you don't have any clue and then you go off and spend hundreds of dollars willy-nilly over the next year marketing this book, but it wasn't actually a profitable book, the ads tell you this. So you can say, put on the brakes a little bit. Do I need a new cover, a new title, a new something? Is the writing problematic? To know this earlier as opposed to later, hopefully is a thing that saves you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars that you would pour down the hole if you didn't know this fact.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 254 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with Bryan Cohen. Now, Bryan Cohen runs the Author Ad School, Best Page Forward, and co-hosts the Sellmore Book Show. He's helped over 30,000 authors through his free ad challenges and has sold 140,000 copies of his own books as well. Now, Bryan and I talk about all of these things and more, and that's coming up later in the podcast. But first, let's hear a word about this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Findaway Voices. Let's hear a little something from Findaway Voices, shall we?
He's listening. She's listening. They're all searching for their next listen. Is your audiobook out there? If not, what's holding you back? After this, it won't be audiobook creation tools. Introducing Findaway Voices Marketplace, the audiobook creation platform built for a world booming with audiobooks. Voices Marketplace gives you a searchable and trusted space to connect with narrators, free production and business tools, and the power to bring your audiobooks to market quickly. We've heard everything you have asked and used that to build an audiobook creation platform for you. Plus, we give you access to the world's largest audiobook distribution network, reaching listeners through more than 40 retail and library partners. No exclusivity. You keep your rights. This is your audiobook creation platform. Ready to get started? Make it on Marketplace.
And that is a little bit about Findaway Voices and one of their newest offerings. What I love about Findaway Voices is they're constantly offering great choices, great options for authors. And if you want to see this and other ways that you can leverage Findaway Voices as an author, you can check them out over at starkreflections.ca/Findaway. And now comments from recent episodes. On episode 251, The Author Journey with CJ Anaya, Stanley B. Trice said, "A good interview with CJ Anaya. I liked her music at the end. Also, a great trailer for your book with Julie." Thanks so much, Stanley. I appreciate that. I'm glad you love that clip because listening to Cynthia's or CJ's music was just so amazing, and I had such a hard time picking one of her songs that resonated with me, so I did want to pick that clip, and of course there's the post-credit end clips. Maybe you'll find another teaser at the end of this episode as well, related to the book I did with Julie, because it's fun to throw those clips in there. But anyways, thanks so much for that comment, Stanley. Over on the Twittersphere, Edwin Downward had said, based on last week's episode 253, this week's Stark Reflections with Mark Leslie has me thinking again about what has become the answer to the question, what would you tell your younger self? Well, Edwin says, I'd tell myself there was a vibrant community of like-minded authors out there. Go find them. So glad you shared that, Edwin, and that's a really important thing for writers to remember. There are a lot of great communities available for authors out there. So many of them. This awesome community of the Stark Reflections reflective listeners is just one of those communities, but so many places where you can engage and interact with other authors. So that's fantastic advice. Thank you for sharing. If you want to share comments from recent episodes, you can reach me over at Twitter. I'm at Mark Leslie. You can also comment directly on the episodes over at starkreflections.ca. Just a brief personal update for this episode. I am recording this early. I'm recording this on Monday, June 13th. I have a bunch of stuff going on. Dropped Lover's Moon, latest novel in my Canadian Werewolf series, the paranormal romantic comedy co-written with Julie Strauss. We dropped that recently to 99 cents. Tomorrow, as I record this, or in the past, as you're listening to this, on June 14th, 2022, I have a BookBub new releases for less, so we decided to drop it down to 99 cents. I've run a whole bunch of other promos for a few days prior to and post that, just to give it a little bit of an extra boost, an extra push. And the reason I'm recording this a little bit earlier is I am heading up tomorrow on the 14th of June after some morning meetings, heading up to my old stomping grounds in Levack, where I own a house, my mom's old house. I'm going to be spending a few days up there just with a couple of my friends, just to catch up, do a little bit of. I'll be working from home at my mom's place and doing a little bit of work on the house as we kind of continue on with the summer, just checking in on it because it's a 5-hour drive north, and getting to hang out with a couple of my friends that I grew up with and I'm still dear friends with. So that's going to be fun, but just easier for me to pre-record this and get this out the door before I head off. Got a few smaller writing projects in the works. I have the Canadian Mounted book, which I now have to double down on getting work out for. It is the 30th, or is it the 35th anniversary? I got to double check that, of the release of the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And so the research for that book continues. I've got to get a little bit more serious about doubling down on the work for that. And just booked a trip on behalf of Draft to Digital. I'm going to be in July. I'm going to be at Gunnison, which is Western Colorado University, where my good friend Kevin J. Anderson teaches on a master's program in publishing. And I'm going to be one of the guest speakers / lecturers that week as they do some of their in-class, and I will get to attend the graduation ceremony, which is going to be really, really awesome to be there in person. But that's it for my personal update. Why don't we get into the interview with Bryan Cohen? Hey, Bryan, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Hey, Mark, thanks for having me.
This is such a momentous occasion because I have long joked with you that after 250 plus episodes of my podcast, we've missed connecting so many times. I've had your two co-hosts from the Sellmore Book Show on, and I have not yet had Bryan on. So it was kind of like the curse of the Cohen or something.
That's okay. It happens, but I'm overjoyed. There should be overjoyed and joyed. I'm both to be here.
Yeah, joyed, and that beard is looking so sharp on you too. Listening to you, I don't watch the video for Sellmore Book Show. I listen. Yeah, and I can't hear the beard in your voice. So this was quite a delightful surprise.
I was so excited to be able to present this on your wonderful program.
Awesome. So you have fingers in a lot of pies. Obviously, you've got the Sellmore Book Show, which is a great weekly podcast for news and tips to help you sell more books. You've got the Author Ad School. You've got Best Page Forward. And you're even, as I hear, going to be doing some even more stuff with email marketing. Is that true?
That's true. That is true. All of it is true.
So where should we start? I want to go back to Best Page Forward because I remember hiring you to make my book blurb so much better. And that's kind of where you started off in wanting to support other authors, not just do your own thing.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that and what that offers to authors?
Sure. So Best Page Forward started, I think, around 2016. I just really noticed that there were a lot of folks who talked about hating the blurb writing process. They hated writing the book description. Often memes with Gollum were tossed around. We must write the blurb, but we hates it. And I had been a copywriter for some years at that point. I pretty much had my books and copywriting, freelance copywriting on the side. And I said, well, I do copywriting. Maybe I could do blurbs as well. And so I started working on people's blurbs for a pittance at the time. And it's funny because, Best Page Forward is now kind of one of the top in the industry with it. But in the beginning, it was like, give me a quarter and a smile and I'll write you a blurb, basically. And it was a lot of fun working on all of that. And but it was a lot. It was a lot of blurbs. And I did eventually decide, okay, well, I could spend 6 hours a day writing these, or I could do what every good online entrepreneur does and teach some other writers to do it. I happened to know a lot of writers. And so now we have, I think right now we have about 8 writers working, and we've written over 5,000 descriptions since 2016. It's been pretty wild, and we really have a lot of fun with it.
So I just want to, for any authors who are listening and are wondering, one of the biggest misconceptions, I think, is people think you have to read the book in order to write a blurb, right? That's true, right, Bryan? You have to read the book in order to write a successful blurb.
It is a misconception, as you said. And the reason that it is not correct is because if you're too close to the material, as many authors are, it actually makes it more difficult to pull out, well, what are the most important things? What are the things that genre readers who love that genre, what are they looking for? Almost pulling out the typical tropes and the inciting incidents and the conflicts, and knowing those specific things rather than saying, well, all of these things were the inciting incident, really, and of course I can't say anything after Act 2 because it's a spoiler, and all of these things that people who are too close to the book
Right.
Think about when they're writing their blurb, which does make it an easier process for someone who maybe just knows the highlights.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for clearing up that misconception.
Of course.
Well, if you just read the book, then you'd know. So, but then you moved on in the last couple of years, especially. You've now been also helping authors. Well, you're still helping authors there because you have a great team that you have in place.
Yeah,
you're helping authors managing ads, and that's a whole other. We hate it, but we want it.
Oh yeah. And this is funny. I just spent the last 2 days recording the audiobook for the book that I wrote about Amazon ads called Self-Publishing with Amazon Ads. And we did a Kickstarter for that campaign. It was a ton of fun. We funded in 28 minutes. So I guess people really do like to know about Amazon ads. And yeah, so I have a lot of Amazon ad info circulating in my brain right now. But when it comes to these ads, I think that it's telling that I've spoken with multiple people at Amazon about this. We did a webinar together in December, which was wild for Amazon to reach out and ask for that. But in speaking to them, the most common refrain, even Amazon employees in the Amazon ads department say is, it's pretty confusing. I tried going in there to make ads, and it's just so telling that it's even confusing for the folks working on the product. And so that's why I'm so glad me and my team, we've been doing these free ad challenges for the last 2.5 years. And we like to share pretty much everything about it
Right.
with everybody for free, so that, hey, you can work on it on your own after. You could join a course after that we run if you want to, but you don't need to. You can take these things at certain points of the year and become self-sufficient on it, because I think that there's so much to wade through that, the typical like 40-minute webinar and then come to us, we know everything. I don't think it flies with Amazon ads, because you really do need to kind of mix it up in there if you want to know that this platform is something you want to use.
So you've got these regularly running, the free
Right.
ads for authors. So an author who's thinking about it, where do they need to be, or where should they be before they go, yeah, I'm gonna go check out this course? Do they have to be at a certain place in their writing career?
Well, there's the free challenges, and then there's the course, which is like 10 additional hours of more fun.
more
they're
in
all
depth
fun.
because you can't get enough. Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
you love it so much that you have to do ad stuff. Well, the challenges are meant to be wherever you are. At the beginning of your career, one book, you can still take the challenge.
Okay.
And Amazon's actually made it easier recently, because now even if you are traditionally published, you can actually run an Amazon ad easily.
Yeah.
There was a workaround, but it was a little clunky. Now, if you can claim a book in Author Central, you can run an ad to it, which it makes it so much easier. Yes, especially
yes.
for
amazing for those books where I have payment splitting and I'm not publishing direct to Amazon. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. For all of those multi-author anthologies, collaborations, if you publish with a small press, you can do it. But yeah, we try to make it so you can start from absolute scratch, because and even if like people come back and take these challenges over and over again, because it's easy to forget too.
Right. Yeah. Oh, wow.
And so, yeah.
Fantastic. So I guess we'll have a link in the show notes. Are there any forthcoming ones that are scheduled, or is that just kind of coming up every quarter or something?
Every quarter. So the next one is in July. I believe it starts Wednesday, July 13th. And so that'll be the next one. We usually run them July, October, January, and April.
Okay.
Some change could happen at some point in the future, but that's kind of those are our go-to months. And then there is the opportunity during those to buy our author ad school course. And this is fun. I don't know, like this is one of those things that's kind of hard to convey, because there's just so much in these things that it's like, well, where do you start? We do 4 weekly live calls minimum.
Wow.
Every single week in a variety of time zones, so that like we have a call that rotates between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. so that folks who live in Australia, New Zealand, and then for the 3 a.m., it's perfect for like London in the morning, Europe in the morning.
Right.
And it's just really important to us that there's always an opportunity to ask a question. You've probably seen this too, Mark. There's too many courses where it's like, great, you got it. See you later. Have fun. Have fun storming the castle. Do
you think it'll work?
Yeah, think it'll work? But we really like giving as many opportunities for people to just ask a real person a real question whenever they need to, because I think it's so easy to buy a course, and for that the endorphins in your body, the serotonin to be like, great, I bought the course, my problem is solved, without even doing the videos.
So when somebody goes to take the free ad challenge, is it where I come along and I think, okay, I have a book that I've just published and I want to use this. So is this an opportunity while they're watching it that they can kind of see what you're doing and then go in and do it? And then, like you said, then I can ask Bryan questions or ask someone from
Yeah.
the team questions, because obviously you can't be awake 24/7. You probably divide up your time zones, right? Does that mean so that's kind of part of it, is so I can actually go through, learn some things, then I can ask some. Well, this is part of the course, actually.
Well, it's part of the course, but even in the challenge, that video 0, the prep for the challenge, homework number 1, you're creating ads. Like,
you're actually doing the hands-on stuff.
Yeah, you're doing the hands-on stuff even in the free thing, because like I said, I think people need to play in there, need to try it, because it's definitely not for everybody. But the great thing about ads is, and I think this is more true with Amazon than Facebook and BookBub, but they're all good. So when you have a book, you can guess at if this is profitable or not based on kind of like what promos you've done and everything, but you don't know for sure. And so what you can do is say, all right, I'm going to get 100 clicks on this book, and then I'm going to look at my numbers overall. And I'm going to see, first of all, if you spent $50 and you made $70, it's like, well, great. This is a profitable book. It's not amazingly, enormously profitable, but it's also not just me throwing money down a hole.
Right.
And that's a good thing to know. Now, if it is you spend $50, but you only made $30, this is so important to know, because if you don't have any clue and then you go off and spend hundreds of dollars willy-nilly over the next year marketing this book, but it wasn't actually a profitable book, the ads tell you this. So you can say, put on the brakes a little bit. Do I need a new cover, a new title, a new something? Is the writing problematic? To know this earlier as opposed to later, hopefully is a thing that saves you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars that you would pour down the hole,
right,
if you didn't know this fact.
Wow, this is fantastic. And so if that's not enough, if helping them have better sales copy for their books, if helping them understand the profitability and measuring for ads and some of the strategies that work for that. You were talking about starting some email marketing. Is this a course? Is this a book? What's the plan? What do you got cooking? Well,
I have always loved email marketing. I think that the way I was really able to connect with the author community at first was a lot through email. And I still love the other stuff. I love TikTok. I love Amazon ads. I love it all. But email makes things more regular, makes things more certain. If you have an email list that's building from launch to launch, you can assume that your next launch is going to be bigger than your previous one, right, which is great. So we do have a new book that'll be coming out. As is in vogue, we will be doing a Kickstarter for this book, and that launches June 2nd. And I know that this is going to come out probably after that, so that's great. And now I'm like worried. I was like thinking about the URL. I was like, is it kick your email or kick your emails? I think it's kickyouremail.com. But if that doesn't work, put an S on it.
Yeah, and so we'll have it in the show notes properly when
we'll get it
sometime
right
in the near future.
Exactly. But we are really invested with this book and with this series because it's similar to self-publishing with Amazon ads, which is right there by my face.
Yeah.
The way we've written this series is it alternates between a story where I am working with an author and the actual explanation. And so in this book that is coming up, I'm working with an author named Nina, who is all about the shiniest object she can find. She wants to do the hottest, coolest thing. She wants to find the push button that will get her success. And she wins a contest with me and wonders openly, Bryan, why did you have a contest for a marketing method that's so old? Like, why are you doing email? Maybe we should do it about this thing or this thing or this thing. And I say, well, hold on a sec. The reason we're doing it about email is because there are so many benefits to having a regular email list. And there is an opportunity to grow. It is slow and steady, no question. I think everything I teach is boringly slow and steady, but
we know that old story.
Exactly.
We know how it ends.
Exactly. And the slow and steady email growth over time is a great way to get more reviews, great way to actually connect with fans on a regular basis. And it's a great way to sell more books in the long run. But too many authors look for the shiny newest thing, which usually doesn't involve them actually having a way to regularly contact their people.
Right. Wow. This is amazing. I appreciate that. So, and then on top of it, you have been doing the Sellmore book show originally with Jim Kukral. And then when Jim retired from the podcast, H. Claire Taylor came along, and you and Claire had done some comedy humorous podcasts as well, and have known each other for a long time. So what are you at? How many years has it been, and how many episodes are out in that now?
It's over 7 years. I believe it's even, it could be even getting closer to 8. We've done 400, and I think this week was 422 or 423. Wow. And there has never been a week off.
No, although I admire something about both you and Claire is that when you need to, because you're in the middle of an ad challenge or you're maxing yourself out in terms of time, you bring in a guest host. I've stepped in a couple times to help you guys out with that. As one of you has decided to take some mental health time to just say, listen, I can't do it all. Therefore, you step back. So you're very studious, I guess, or very conscious about not killing yourselves by trying to do everything all at the same time, right?
Right. And I think Claire has taught me a lot about this. Claire's very good at it. And she takes a week off every quarter, and she sometimes will take it off even more regularly than that. And I have actually had I had a high-end coach who I paid. One of the first things that she had me do was say, all right, what are your vacations this year? And I thought that was just really great. Just thinking about, well, what's your downtime first? Because the downtime is usually the first thing to go if you don't plan it. But if you actually put in the downtime, you'll be able to recover. You'll be able to come up with new and creative ideas. If you have writer's block, one of the reasons could be that you've actually worked yourself into a rut. And so I think having that downtime is extremely important.
Okay, good stuff. And so now I want to take this back to something I normally, when I start talking to people, I talk about the writing and how they got into the industry and stuff like that. But I know that you do have nonfiction books for writers, and that's been something that you've continued to do. But I worry about the Bryan Cohen who wanted to tell stories and wanted to be an author. What, have you left any room for him to keep doing some of the stuff that he had done? I remember my first conversation with you was when you had hired models to model for a series because you wanted to have original covers. And I was like, that is so genius. Like, you're not going to find the same people on other covers. These are Bryan's people. So you were, you were innovative. That was like 8-9 years ago or whatever that was. Right. But does Bryan Cohen still get to write fiction?
Well, that's one of the reasons I took up this new format for the nonfiction books that go with fiction melding in with nonfiction.
Oh, the storytelling of you and Nina having a conversation, right?
So I've been able to scratch that itch a little bit, but there's definitely like thoughts of what I will do with that in the future. I've really, from having a wonderful 5-year-old, I have enjoyed the idea of some children's books that I would like to write. I actually received a fair number of poetry classes in college.
Okay.
And back in the day, that was how I would attempt to woo a lady here and there. I do say attempt, and so that is worth
Yeah,
keeping in
that's not
mind.
how they got your better half. That wasn't through poetry.
I definitely wrote my wonderful wife some poetry. I think I would call myself maybe like 2 for 4 in college with poetry, but I love the idea of having a very cute series of children's books that rhyme. I do think that might be in my future as well for the stories. But I don't know if I'll be returning to young adult anytime soon, or to any different genres. I think that the reason children's books are appealing to me is because it's fewer words that must be very refined over time, but it is a little bit less of a commitment number of words wise.
Right.
But I'm truly enjoying, like, I got a creative spark from this. I wrote the self-publishing with Amazon ads book, and then immediately started working on the self-publishing and email marketing book, and have already outlined the majority of another book in the series that will be coming after. So I think I got my spark back.
Oh, good stuff. And I can only imagine, as you're reading stories with your daughter, and as she starts to get more and more adept at her own reading, that there's probably some personal satisfaction that comes from sharing stories for little people, right?
Oh yeah, no, and I certainly just love, like, I sat in and read some indie books to Riley's class, and I read a great book called I See a Bear, and it's it's comma but of course the kids think it's a but, and so
That's
the
cute.
kids were just cracking up, and I think that to have a book like that could make the kids laugh while also making the grown-ups not hate having to read it 5 times to that child. I think that would be a lot of fun. So that's definitely something I'm thinking about.
Oh, awesome. Well, Bryan, I do have to say, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show, for all of the wisdom that you regularly share with thousands. I think you've helped more than 30,000 authors when we look at some of the count. I mean, how do you keep track, right?
Right, I know. Yeah, something like that. You could say something like that.
Just like lots, more than a couple authors have benefited from your wisdom. But speaking of wisdom, I want to throw something back at you that I know you love doing with Claire and your co-host. I have this hot potato of wisdom that I would like to pass to you, and see if there is some hot potato of wisdom that you would like to leave my listeners with.
Just spread a little butter on this.
Oh my gosh, delicious. I hope we can get some little bacon bits on there too.
Yeah. There we go. Throw those on there. Awesome. Sure. I would love to make my best effort, especially since I wasn't on Sellmore Book Show this week. I'm on your show.
There we go. So you got the potato anyways.
I got the potato anyway. I would say that there are a countless number of things you could do with your books. And I think that the challenge is not doing them all at once, not trying to do it all. I think that we often spread ourselves too thin, and we assume that we need to be actively engaged in everything. But from what I've seen, the most successful people, when they got successful, when they got over that hump and then started moving up in what seemed like an overnight fashion, they were good at one writing thing and one marketing thing. And they rode that to the success that eventually allowed them to take up more writing things and more marketing things. And so we see them at their peak. They're doing 7 different things. But at the beginning, they were good at one writing thing and one marketing thing. So that means you spreading yourself thin is preventing you from doing what they did. So it's a good idea to drop most of what you're doing to focus on just one thing.
That was a delicious hot potato of wisdom. Thank you so much for helping me take a bite out of that. Bryan, can you please let my listeners know where they can find out more about you and all the cool things that you do online?
Thank you. Yes. And it was great being here. Definitely go check out the campaign. And I'll probably now have to just buy them both. kickyouremail.com or kick your emails. I have no idea. But you can definitely check out that campaign there. There are a ton of bonuses. I just was writing them today. So let me see. We've got the email list from scratch tutorials, 100 email writing prompts. I had to go back to my writing prompts.
Oh, I remember that book. Yeah.
Get more subscribers challenge, an email challenge, and self-publishing live summer 2022, a 2-day email marketing event, all sorts of stuff.
Fun stuff.
All sorts of stuff. And so that, plus go listen to Sellmore Book Show, sellmorebookshow.com.
Awesome. And we'll have links to all of the Bryan things at the show notes at Stark Reflections. Bryan, thanks again for hanging out with me today.
Thank you so much, Mark.
So there's two things I want to reflect on from the interview with Bryan. The first has to do with one of the concepts he talked about, or at least we spoke about, or I asked him about, which was the importance of downtime. Talking about something he learned from Claire Taylor, which was, scheduling times of rest, because we have a lot to do. As independent authors, we're running our own businesses. We probably, many of us, most of us actually work other jobs. There's very few people who can live off of it full time, although there's thousands of authors who do. There's hundreds of thousands who don't or can't. Have family lives, have other commitments, have all kinds of things to do. And it's okay, because it's a long-term thing. It's okay to take moments of rest, because would you rather rest for a day or rest for a week or take a week off and just enjoy and recharge than burn out and never be able to do it again? Thinking more of the long term. And I'm a huge Rush fan, so obviously I'm gonna riff or quote off the song Marathon from the 1985 album Power Windows. It's some of the lyrics for the song are, "It's not how fast you can go, the force goes into the flow. If you pick up the beat, you can forget about the heat. More than just survival, more than just a flash, more than just a dotted line, more than just a dash. It's a test of ultimate will, that heartbeat climb uphill." This is kind of like the motif of thinking about your writing career as a marathon, not as a sprint, not as a short race. So, as the song ends, Neil Peart, lyricist extraordinaire, said, "You can do a lot in a lifetime if you don't burn out too fast. You can make the most of the distance. First, you need endurance. First, you've got to last." And that's the message Bryan is sharing. And I don't even know if Bryan's a Rush fan. I don't think I've ever spoken about Rush to Bryan, but he's sharing the idea that you can do it. You can do all of these things, but you've got to take time. You've got to be able to recharge so you can be in it for the long run. So don't burn yourself out. And that relates to the second thing that Bryan talked about is authors who spread themselves too thin, because especially in today's society, we're overwhelmed. You just heard a podcast, you heard some great ideas from Bryan, you listen to all kinds of other things, you're reading and you're constantly learning from other people in the industry. There's so many things you can do. There's so many things you could be doing. But let's take another lesson from Bryan and go back to that hot potato of wisdom he spoke about. Think about those successful people, and just remember, if you go back, that there's most likely those people who seem to be doing it all, seem to have it all, they probably started off at being good at just one thing about their writing, whether it was dialogue, whether it was characters, whether it was plotting, whether it was writing a great first draft, whether it was any of those things that they were really, really good at. They were just really, really good at, and they started with that one great thing, and then they built from there. And when it came to marketing, they were really, really good at just one thing, and then maybe picked up or learned other things along the way. So you cannot, just like you can't expect yourself to be going non-stop, full blast, giving it your 100% all the time. You've got to slow down. You've got to rest at the side of the road. You've got to give yourself some space. You can't possibly do all the things, and you're never going to do them all perfectly. So start with picking just one thing that you can focus on learning. Learn that, do it well. If it's not working, you move on to something else. You give that a shot. Being good at just one writing thing, being good at just one marketing thing, that's manageable. It's not, oh, I have to do a dozen things. So think about that. Think about the way that you approach your writing. Think about that marathon. Think about the long term. Be inspired by people like Bryan, who know when it's too much and know when it's time to take a bit of a breather, a bit of a break, catch your breath, pick yourself back up, and get back in that long-term race. Speaking of long-term race, thank you for listening to episode 254 of the Stark Reflections podcast. I'm so pleased that I've been around for a number of years. This is, I think, my 5th season and 254 episodes. Thank you, dear listener, for listening. If you want to support the podcast, you can join the awesome patrons who support this podcast over on patreon.com/starkreflections. And a huge shout out and thank you to my awesome patrons. Now, as I'm recording this, we had already done the one virtual chat with patrons, which was Maddie Dalrymple, Roland Denzel, and Katie Cross. The 4 of us had a bit of a chat. That was kind of a fun one. So the audio for that will be in the feed for patrons, and there will be a highlight show of highlights from that, as well as the 2 forthcoming, or if you're listening to this in the future, the 2 that have happened already in June of the other patron hangouts. And doing those hangouts is a special treat, and thank you to my patrons. Although, if you do listen to that episode, you'll learn that it's really just therapy for me, apparently. Just hanging out and learning from really, really cool people. But you don't have to support the podcast on Patreon. You're supporting the podcast just by listening to it. But if you did want to offer your support, you can also share the podcast with someone that you think would find value in it. Again, you can also leave comments for the episodes over at starkreflections.ca. All of those things, all of that engagement really, really does make a positive difference. And I thank you so much. And again, thank you for listening. So this is the end of episode 254. Until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.
Huh.
Gail said as I placed my beer back on the table.
So that's what it's like.
I turned my eyes and attention back to her. That's what what's like.
That creative spark, inspiration, whatever it is. I could have sworn I saw the minute it flickered into your eyes. The air changed. You seemed to change. You went from a listener to being engaged in something a million miles away.
Did I?
Yeah.
She said, and her eyes sparkled with excitement.
It was such an amazing transformation to observe. You almost look like you might be having an orgasm.
I laughed. That's sometimes exactly how it feels.
No kidding?
Yeah. You've been listening to Lover's Moon, a paranormal romantic comedy by Mark Leslie and Julie Strauss. Read by the authors. Lover's Moon is book 5 in the Canadian Werewolf series, published by Stark Publishing and available in print ebook and audiobook.